Hello everyone, it's Colby. Monsters of the Multiverse came out just under 2 weeks ago, D&D's new source book, and it's been interesting to read up on all the changes, what kind of the community thinks about it, and now I can actually give my thoughts and review for it and tell you if you should buy it. So make sure to like and subscribe. Let's go over some of the details. I'm not going to go over all the specifics, but we're going to talk about it generally and whether or not you should buy it. Let's look at what is in here first. So Monsters of the Multiverse is there's nothing new in the book. All the monsters, all the races that are included in it are from other books, and that's really going to be a big factor on whether you should buy it or not. When it's made up of monsters that have already existed, you can immediately think that I already bought this, and that's a big takeaway from this book, and its value. So how much you own affects how much you want to buy this, as well as if you're a player or a DM. This book has a lot of monsters in it, so if you're a player, this book might not be for you. And as a player, you really want to focus on if you own any of the races that are included in it, and if you value any of the minor changes that they made to it, because they didn't just republish all of the monsters and races with the exact same ones. They've made minor changes to almost every monster and race they put in this book, and most of them positive, but we'll get into that. So as I mentioned, the book is comprised of over 250 monsters, and these are older monsters with updates to them. So they make spellcasters easier for dungeon masters to run, giving many monsters more damage and resilience, so they balance them a little bit, and improve the organization of the stat block themselves. So let's get into what that actually looks like. So here, I have a spellcaster, a Turtle Druid, and there's a lot of information on here, but one thing that is important to focus on that has been changed a lot in the spellcasters, and this is really what they mean by making spellcasters easier for DMs. Because trust me, when you're a DM, you have multiple monsters on the battlefield. Keeping track of multiple spellcasters can be a little bit much. So these changes are welcome, and let's go get into what these are. So on the left here, you can see that spellcasting in Monsters of the Multiverse. The Turtle Druid can cast Druidcraft, Guidance, and then 2 per day each. They can cast these. And I think this is a little bit more realistic for a fight. It's only a challenge rating of 2, so it can't cast too many spells. But when you're in a fight, the combat's not going to be going for that long, and also with its multi-attack and doing other things, it'll have plenty of time and options to use its actions, and I think most DMs will find that just 2 per day is perfectly fine for a challenge rating 2. Now let's look at how complicated it was before. A Turtle Druid could cast at will for cantrips, Druidcraft, Guidance, and Produce Flame. They also had 4 first level spell slots that you needed to keep track of, where they could use Animal Friendship, Cure Wounds, Speak with Animals, and Thunderwave, and then 3 second level spell slots. Now, this naturally came up because that's how it works for characters. But something important to note is that with characters, you are playing one character, and as the DM, as I mentioned, you're going to be playing multiple characters. So this actually helps a lot when you're DMing, and you're looking at spellcasters. Spell slots is the last thing you want to keep track of. So just keeping track of how many it can cast 2 per day is a very welcome change for DMs. The other monster we're going to look at quickly is Orcus, one of my favorite legendary monsters and an absolute beast of a monster. Challenge rating of 26, so this is a very powerful monster, and you can tell it can do a lot. So again, just like the Turtle Druid, the left side is Mordecai and Monsters of the Multiverse, and the right is the old one. And immediately you can notice that things have been changed. They've been moved around, which is very much welcome. Things have been simplified. So on the Monsters of the Multiverse, you can see that overall things have just been simplified. And you'll also notice that the spellcasting is actually under actions. So when you look under actions, you can see the spellcasting they can do. For some reason, before they'd had actions, but they were multi-attack. You can use the wand to hit things, or to hit things with the wand. Or you can use your tail. And then spellcasting is like over here. And as a DM, when you're looking for actions, you look under actions. You don't look in this area where it's just like paragraphs upon paragraphs. So these are all kind of minor changes, and you know, it really depends on if you value these and how much you own already. I like these changes. I'm a DM and a player, so this book is great for me. And also anything that makes it easier for me as a DM, I'm a big fan of. Let's hop back into what the other features are, now that we've gone over some of the features of the monsters, and look at the 30 playable races. So this book includes over 30 playable races, obviously, and all have kind of little changes. I've gone over all of the small changes and how they rank compared to others in my other videos, so click in the top right if you haven't seen those videos yet. The links for those videos will also be in the description. There's quite a few changes, and honestly, most of them are positive. You'll see here, with the top rank being game-changing, this one, the second top being better, middle being kind of whatever, and then there's really only a few that are actually kind of negative that we didn't really like about it. And one of them, you know, this is also just why. Like, why did they make this change? I remember Lizard Folk, we put it in Y because for some reason the bite attack had changed from piercing to slashing, which brings to mind just a really funny image of just like piercing and then just like dragging its head along the body of the monster. Anyways, we found that a little bit weird with those changes, but a lot of these races have been changed for the better. Some of the more general changes that I can go over, because I'm not going to go into the specifics, you can check out that video if you're interested, is that they took all the ability score improvements and can outline them with Tasha's. So you can choose between +2 or +1 ability score improvements or +1, +1, +1. So ability score improvements are no longer locked to the race for all of these. The spells that you would get with the races are now unchained from a specific ability score, so you would be able to, you know, the race would allow you to cast this spell, but, you know, you could only cast it with charisma, and you wanted to be a wizard, and you had high intelligence and not very good charisma because you're just like a smart, shy guy or something like that. So they've given you the option to choose if you want to use charisma, wisdom, or intelligence as a spellcasting ability modifier, which is nice. And also, a lot of the unarmed strikes, the unique ones, have been changed to deal more damage. So that's why like Centaur is in here. And I think Satyr as well. Like the only changes they got were just an increase of damage from that. But overall, these racial changes are pretty great. And even more amplified now because one other common trend throughout the changes to the races is that many of their racial abilities that you would use as a reaction or an action or a bonus action in combat are now not limited to just being used once. They are now kind of follow the general rule of being used equal to your proficiency modifier. You have a certain number of charges for that, and then it resetting on your long rest. So one good example of that is, you know, the Goliath's Stone Endurance is great. It's a great reaction. You can only use it once, and I think everyone kind of agreed it was still pretty great as just being able to use once. But now we put it in game changing because just the option of using Stone's Endurance multiple times in a fight equal to your proficiency modifier is crazy. And a lot of these races have been changed a lot. Aarakocra got kind of nerfed, so their flying speed is now tied to their walking speed, which, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You have less speed, but 50 feet was a little bit overpowered. We all know that. But it scales your walking speed, so you can be a very fast monk and really increase that probably almost to 50. And they also gain like a spell. I think Gust of Wind is what it's called at 3rd level. And they just, you know, it makes sense. They just bat their wings and push and do the spell. So they've been kind of nerfed a little bit, but honestly, I don't mind because they also added a whole new spell in. The Ganassis have been changed quite a bit, all positive changes. Kobolds have been completely changed. Hobgoblins completely changed, to be honest. I love the Hobgoblins traits. Make sure to check out the details on the Hobgoblins in those other videos. So this is actually where a lot of the value comes from the book for me. And I think if you're a player, even if you own these races, I still think buying the book is worth it. Because these changes are great. They make a lot of the old races kind of rejuvenate them and make them just all around better. You know, D&D 5e has been out for a while now, and they've changed a lot of the rules. They've kind of tailored it so into like a new version of play, and they've also made a lot of mistakes early on with the rules, and a lot of this is just fixing a lot of those old races, and the majority of them are positive, so that's pretty great. The last thing included in this book is a little bit of a shift in the lore. I'm not too big on the lore for a lot of these things, but because I homebrew a lot of stuff, but you know, the monster lore for the monsters have been changed to kind of go along with the multiverse idea. This is probably going to go along with the new books that are going to be coming out, so Radiant Citadel is one of the books that's kind of multiplanar, multiversal, and then Spelljammer is in space. So I feel like the books going forward are going to have a different tone to them, which I actually absolutely love. I love, you know, taking the setting out of the real world and going a little bit crazy with it. Kind of like how the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been doing it. You know, just, you know, hanging out in a camp in a bar is fun, but also going into the elemental plane of fire, or going to a flying city in the sky, also known as the Radiant Citadel, all kind of built around a crystal, is pretty cool and is just fantastic. So, those are my thoughts about it. Honestly, I do think you should buy it, but you should really check out the minor changes to the races if you are a player. Check out my video on those, and really make the decision for yourself. I'd recommend it. You've heard me say that a few times now. So if you really think it's for you, buy it. It's a good book. It's a hospitality book. They're just correcting a lot of the mistakes they've made before. And the nice thing is that you don't have to buy all these books to get these races too. If you're someone that doesn't want to buy adventure books, the Harengon and the Fairy is in this book. So you do not need to buy I can't remember the name of it, but it was like the Feywild adventure book, and it has 2 races, and they're great. They're great races. You don't have to buy that adventure book to get these races. You can buy Monsters of the Multiverse. It's especially good if you're more of a homebrew campaign person. So overall, pretty positive about this book. I think they did a good job, and that's really all I have to say about it. So if you like this video, of course, like and subscribe. I'm going to be covering all of the new books. We also do subclass rankings, and after that, who knows? We're just going to be talking about D&D for years and years, because we love it. We play it a lot, probably 2 to 3 times a week, and I love talking D&D with you guys. So make sure to write in the comments what you think about the book. Tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right. Love to talk with you. Have a good one.